Hi, my name is Zhengyu Zheng. I'm here to introduce you some supplementary material for CS438. It is a case of a router design mainly according to a paper titled a 50 gigabytes per second IP router. This video is going to provide you a better understanding of router structure and some available upgrade ideas. This is the catalog I'm going to walk through. A router is a deceptively simple piece of equipment. At minimum, it is a collection of network interfaces, some sort of bus or a connection fabric connecting those interfaces, and some software or logic that determine how to route packets among those interfaces. As in the class, Professor has already taught something about what is inside a router. On the left picture, we already know that a router needs to underwrap the packets to get the network layer header to improve to the switch fabric. On the right pictures, we can see that we have different kinds of switch fabrics: system memory type, shared bus type, crossbar. The router we are discussing today uses a similar one to the crossbar type. The second part is the overview of the router architecture. This is basically the architecture outline of the router designed by the researchers that published this paper. The router is called MGR. MGR consists of multiple line cards. These are line cards, each supporting up to 16 network interfaces, as the paper mentioned, and several forwarding engine cards. This is forwarding engine card, all plugged into a high-speed switch. Yes, they just use switch to play the role of switch fabric, which is a little bit different from the one we learned in the class. We will come to that later. When a packet arrives at a line card, its header is removed and passed through the switch to a forwarding engine. The remainder of the packets remains on the inbound line card. The forwarding engine reads the header to determine how to forward the packet, and then update the header to send the update header and its forwarding instructions back to the inbound line card. The inbound line card integrates the new header with the rest of the packets and sends the entire packet to the outbound line card for transmission. There's also a network processor here, which is responsible for the ARP and running the routing algorithms. Now, we have come to the innovation part. In this part, we are going to spread the topic based on the innovation points MGR has compared to the other routers. In MGR, forwarding engine has a complete set of the routing tables. Historically, routers have kept a central master routing table, and the satellite processor each keeps only a modest cache of the recent use routes. If a route was not in the satellite processor's cache, it will request the relevant routes from the central table. This approach will easily make the central master processor a bottleneck. In MGR, all routing protocols are implemented on the network processor, which is responsible for keeping complete routing information. For its routing information, the network processor builds a forwarding table for each forwarding engine. It pushes the routing tables down into each forwarding engine. Since the forwarding engine only requires summary of the data in the router, in particular, next hop information, so their table can be much smaller than network processor table, and very likely to look like the forwarding table we saw in the class. In addition, forwarding engine also have a divided B cache, which consists of two parts to avoid being slowed down while doing the download job from the network processor. So after loading the simplified forwarding table, network processor also need to send a signal of switching caches to forwarding engines. Now, we are going to talk about the switch they use as the switch fabric. The MGR uses a 15-port switch to move data between function cards. The switch is a point-to-point switch. That is, it effectively looks like a crossbar, connecting one source with one destination. It is an input queue switch in which each input keeps a separate first in, first out queue and bits separately for each output. Keeping track of traffic for each output separately means that the switch does not suffer head-of-line blocking, which is also called HOL. This switch has two pins interfaces to each function card. The data interfaces consist of 75 input data pins and 75 output data pins, clocked at 51.84 MHz. The allocation interfaces consist of two request pins, two inhibit pins, one input data pin, and one output data pin. A switch running cycle is called an epoch. During an epoch, up to 15 simultaneous data transfers take place. Each transfer consists of 1,024 bits of data. The aggregate data bandwidth is 49.77 gigabytes per second. Also is 58.32 gigabytes per second, including the auxiliary bytes. This is where the title of this paper comes from. A whole transfer will finish in 4 epochs. In the first epoch, the source card signals that it has data to send to the destination card. In the second epoch, the switch allocator decides to schedule the transfer for the 4th epoch. In the third epoch, the source and destination line cards are notified that the transfer will take place, and the data path cards are told to configure themselves for the transfer and for all the other transfers in 4th epoch. In the 4th epoch, the transfer takes place. This switch can also do flow control to let destination card shut down. With the clarification above, I think you can understand why I'm saying this is different from the switch that can do CDMA-CD in the class. The allocator is the heart of the high-speed switch in the MGR. It takes all of the pipeline connection requests from the function cards and the inhibit request from the destination card and computes a configuration for each epoch using the pairing algorithm. We can take a quick look at those pairing algorithms. Picture A is the straightforward traversing one. When the switch finds a connection request that does not interfere with previous connection requests already granted, it added that connection to its list of connections for the epoch being scheduled. This algorithm suffers from resource limit and unfairness. Also, we'll have a random shuffle idea to randomly pick input and output cards. For time saving, we can traverse the allocated table in a pattern following the diagonal like shown in the picture B, because those requests on the same line will not in conflict with each other, which makes the scan more effective. For further step saving, we can group the position into small patches, then do the waveform inside them. This is displayed in picture D. Now, let's talk about the forwarding engines. The design places forwarding engines on boards distinct from line cards. Historically, forwarding processors have been placed on the line card. They do this for expediency and also modularization. This plot is the structure for forwarding engines used in MGR. You can see from the photo, once headers reach the forwarding engine, they are placed in a request first in, first out field for processing by the processor called alpha. The packets identifier, which identify both the packets and the interface it is buffered on, will wait until the header processing and modifying in the alpha have finished, then web together to be the new headers. What's special in alpha? Besides the B cache, which can split into two parts, alpha also has a F cache, which can act as a route cache. It can store the routes that are recently loaded. So after the header enters the alpha, it first needs to check if its destination is on the route cache. Only after confirm it is not there, can it be willing to visit the B cache to generate a new route based on the forwarding table. Here we come to the fourth part of the innovation, abstract link layer header. Because the following engines are separated from the like cards, they may receive packets from like cards that use different link layers. To solve this problem, their solution was to require all like cards to support the ability to translate their local link layer headers to and from an abstract link layer header format, which contain the information required for IP forwarding. The inbound abstract header contains information that the forwarding engine code needs to confirm the validity of the IP header and the route chosen for the header. The outbound abstract headers contains directions to the like card about how datagram transmission is to be handled. The important new fields are the multicast count, which indicates how many copies of the packets the inbound like card needs to make, and the destination tag, which tells the outbound like card what destination address to put on the packet, what line to send the packet out, and what flow to assign the packet to. Here we come to the last part, QoS processor. MRG includes quality of service, which is QoS processing. After the packet is assembled in the outbound processing card, its record is parsed to a like card's QoS processor. If the packet is being multicast, one record is passed to each of the interfaces on which the multicast is being sent. The purpose of the QoS processor is to implement flow control and integrate services in the router. Recall that the following engines classify packets by directing them into particular flows. It is the job of the QoS processor to actually schedule each flow's packet. We have gone through all the contents of this paper and discussed some extended points. This paper is rather old, but provides us a very classical perspective on design a well-performed router. Routers today are getting more benefits in both software and hardware development. For example, we have updated protocol, larger embedded memory units, and most recent label switching router techniques to help break down the limits. This is the reference of this video. Thank you for watching.